Dear friends, today we gather with one heart and one purpose: to discover what it means to walk with wisdom amid the complexities of life. Wisdom is not a luxury reserved for the few. It is the compass by which every believer must chart his or her course. We are called to walk not as those who drift aimlessly through life, but as those who walk with eyes wide open, circumspectly, with purpose and discernment in a world that pulls us in countless directions. We must understand the urgency of redeeming our time. Each day offers moments that can either draw us closer to God or distance us from His will. Time, once lost, cannot be reclaimed. So let us give careful thought to the choices we make, realizing that every moment is an opportunity to reflect God's love, to serve others, and to grow in Christ. Like character, the world today is filled with distractions and challenges that can cloud our judgment. Without wisdom, we are like travelers without a map, easily lost, missiled, or discouraged. But wisdom is not something we generate in isolation. True wisdom is found in surrender. Surrender to the one who knows the beginning and the end, to the one who guides us with clarity and compassion. To walk by the Spirit means to yield to His gentle lead each day. It means choosing gratitude over complaint, humility over pride, and obedience over selfish ambition. Such a life bears fruit that endures: peace, joy, patience, kindness. These are not mere words, but the living evidence of wisdom active within us. And so, beloved, let us not merely admire wisdom from afar. The call to walk wisely is a call to live with spiritual awareness, intentionality, and reverence for God in every season of life. It is an invitation to move beyond careless living and to embrace a life that is guided by discernment rather than impulse. To walk wisely does not mean merely possessing knowledge or intelligence. It means allowing truth to shape our thoughts, decisions, and responses. Wisdom is revealed in how we walk, in the direction we choose, the pace we maintain, and the care with which we step through life. Every day presents choices, and each choice becomes a step that either draws us closer to God's purpose or pulls us away from it. Walking wisely requires us to pause, to examine our paths, and to recognize that not every open door is meant to be entered, and not every voice deserves to be followed. In a world that celebrates speed, noise, and instant gratification, wisdom teaches us the value of restraint and reflection. It reminds us that a hurried life often leads to careless mistakes, while a mindful walk produces stability and peace. To walk wisely is to be alert to the subtle dangers that threaten our faith, alert to the quiet promptings of the Spirit, and alert to the needs of others along the way. It is a conscious refusal to live on autopilot. Wisdom calls us to examine how we speak, how we react under pressure, and how we conduct ourselves when no one is watching. Our walk becomes a testimony, silently preaching long before words are ever spoken. Walking wisely also means understanding that life is not neutral ground. There are forces constantly attempting to shape our values and priorities. Without wisdom, we easily conform to patterns that slowly erode our spiritual sensitivity. Wisdom teaches us to distinguish between what is urgent and what is important, between what is popular and what is right. It anchors us when opinions shift and circumstances change. A wise walk is marked by humility, the recognition that we do not have all the answers and that we need divine guidance daily. Pride causes people to stumble, but wisdom teaches us to lean not on our own understanding. To walk wisely is to live with purpose, knowing that our lives are entrusted to us for something greater than personal comfort or temporary success. It means allowing God's truth to correct our steps when we wander and to steady us when the road becomes uncertain. Wisdom does not promise an easy journey, but it assures a meaningful one. When we walk wisely, our lives gain direction, our choices gain clarity, and our faith gains depth, shaping us into people whose lives reflect light in a world that desperately needs it. Redeeming the time is a sacred responsibility that calls us to recognize the value and weight of every moment entrusted to us. Time is not merely a sequence of hours and days, it is a divine gift that carries purpose within it. Once a moment passes, it can never be reclaimed, and this truth alone should awaken a deep sense of urgency in how we live. Redeeming the time means refusing to waste our lives on things that do not matter eternally. It is the conscious decision to invest our days wisely, knowing that each moment carries an opportunity to grow, to serve, and to align ourselves more closely with God's will. In a world filled with distractions, redeeming the time requires discipline and spiritual awareness. We are constantly invited to be busy, yet business is not the same as productivity. Many lives are filled with motion but lack direction. To redeem the time is to examine where our energy is going and to ask whether our pursuits are drawing us closer to purpose or simply keeping us occupied. Time is often lost not through great sins, but through small, careless choices, endless distractions, delayed obedience, and misplaced priorities. Wisdom teaches us that what we repeatedly give our time to will ultimately shape who we become. Redeeming the time also means recognizing the season we are living in. There are moments for planting, moments for waiting, and moments for acting with courage and faith. When opportunities arise, wisdom calls us to respond without hesitation, because delayed obedience can result in missed purpose. The days we live in are not always favorable, and challenges can easily discourage us. But redeeming the time means choosing faith over fear and action over complacency. Even in difficult seasons, time can be redeemed through perseverance, prayer, and trust in God's plan. To redeem the time is to live with eternal perspective. It means measuring our lives not by temporary achievements, but by lasting impact. Every conversation, every decision, and every sacrifice carries the potential to influence lives far beyond what we can see. When we redeem the time, ordinary moments become sacred, and daily routines become opportunities for transformation. Life gains meaning when we understand that time is limited and purpose is urgent. Those who redeem the time do not live in regret, because they have chosen to live intentionally, making each day count for what truly matters. Awareness of the world's challenges is essential for anyone who desires to live with wisdom and spiritual stability. We do not live in an environment that is neutral or harmless. The world is filled with pressures, temptations, and influences that constantly compete for our attention and loyalty. To be aware does not mean to live in fear or suspicion, but to live with open eyes and a guarded heart. Wisdom teaches us to recognize the realities around us without being consumed by them. When we ignore the challenges of the world, we become vulnerable to deception. But when we are aware, we are better prepared to stand firm and respond with discernment. The challenges of the world often come subtly rather than openly. They appear in the form of shifting values, moral compromise, and voices that normalize what once was clearly wrong. Many people are not led astray by dramatic failures, but by gradual erosion of conviction. Awareness helps us identify these slow changes before they take root in our lives. It reminds us that not everything celebrated by society is beneficial to the soul. Wisdom enables us to test what we hear, see, and accept, rather than absorbing every influence without reflection. A wise person understands that constant exposure to ungodly patterns eventually shapes thoughts, attitudes, and behavior. Another challenge of the world is distraction. We live in an age where noise is constant and attention is fragmented. Many are exhausted not because they are doing too much of what matters, but because they are overwhelmed by what does not. Awareness helps us recognize when our focus is being stolen and our priorities are being diluted. Without awareness, we can spend our lives reacting instead of responding, drifting instead of walking with intention. Wisdom teaches us to guard our minds and hearts, knowing that what occupies our attention often determines the direction of our lives. The world also presents challenges through suffering, uncertainty, and opposition. Trials can shake faith and raise difficult questions, especially when circumstances seem unfair or overwhelming. Awareness does not deny these realities, but it prepares us to face them with endurance and hope. When we understand that challenges are part of life, we are less likely to be discouraged when they arise. Wisdom helps us interpret hardship not as abandonment, but as an opportunity for growth and deeper dependence on God. To be aware of the world's challenges is to live alert, anchored in truth, and committed to integrity. It is the understanding that while we live in the world, we are not meant to be shaped by it. Awareness empowers us to navigate life with clarity, resist what harms the soul, and remain faithful in the midst of pressure, allowing our lives to reflect steadfast faith and unwavering hope. Surrendering to Christ for true wisdom begins with the humble recognition that human understanding is limited and often flawed. Many people seek wisdom through experience, education, or personal success, yet still find themselves confused, restless, or uncertain when faced with life's deepest questions. True wisdom does not originate from self-confidence or independence. It flows from surrender. To surrender is not to lose strength, but to acknowledge that guidance is needed beyond ourselves. It is the act of placing our thoughts, plans, and ambitions into the hands of Christ, trusting that He sees what we cannot and knows the way we should walk. Surrender challenges the natural desire for control. We prefer to make decisions based on our own reasoning, emotions, or immediate benefit. Yet these very instincts often lead us into frustration and regret. When we surrender to Christ, we allow His truth to reshape our thinking and realign our priorities. Wisdom begins to grow when we stop insisting on our own way and become teachable. A surrendered heart is open to correction, sensitive to conviction, and willing to change direction when necessary. Pride closes the door to wisdom, but surrender opens it wide. True wisdom is not merely knowing what is right, but having the courage and grace to live it out. This kind of wisdom requires daily dependence on Christ, not occasional acknowledgement. Surrender is not a one-time event. It is a continual posture of the heart. Each day presents choices that reveal whether we are guided by self or by faith. When we surrender our fears, our desires, and even our uncertainties, Christ brings clarity where there was confusion and peace where there was anxiety. His wisdom steadies us when emotions fluctuate and circumstances are unpredictable. Surrendering to Christ also transforms how we respond to challenges and relationships. Instead of reacting out of frustration or pride, we learn to respond with patience, humility, and love. Wisdom teaches us when to speak and when to remain silent, when to act and when to wait. These discernments cannot be manufactured by human effort. They are cultivated through intimacy with Christ. The closer we walk with Him, the more His wisdom shapes our character and decisions. To surrender to Christ for true wisdom is to trust that His way is higher than our own. It is choosing obedience over convenience and faith over understanding. In surrender, we find not weakness, but strength, not loss, but direction. When Christ becomes the source of our wisdom, our lives gain depth, our choices gain purpose, and our hearts find rest in the assurance that we are being led by one who is perfect in knowledge and unfailing in love. Living by the Spirit is the foundation of a life that is guided by wisdom, power, and divine purpose. It is a daily invitation to move beyond self-reliance and to depend on God's presence within us for direction and strength. To live by the Spirit does not mean withdrawing from the realities of life, but engaging with them under divine guidance. The Spirit leads us into truth, convicts our hearts, and empowers us to live in a way that reflects God's character. When we live by the Spirit, our lives are shaped not by impulse or emotion, but by obedience and faith. Living by the Spirit requires sensitivity. The Spirit often speaks quietly, guiding through inner conviction, peace, or gentle correction. In a world filled with noise and constant stimulation, it takes intentional stillness to recognize His voice. Those who live by the Spirit learn to listen before acting and to seek God's will before making decisions. This sensitivity grows as we spend time in prayer and reflection, allowing our hearts to be aligned with God's purposes. The Spirit does not force direction. He leads, and we must choose to follow. A Spirit-led life produces visible fruit. Love replaces bitterness, patience replaces anger, and joy rises even in difficult circumstances. These qualities are not the result of human effort alone, but are evidence of divine work within us. Living by the Spirit transforms our responses to trials, teaching us to trust God rather than be overwhelmed by fear. Instead of being controlled by circumstances, we are anchored in hope. The Spirit strengthens us when we are weak and reminds us of God's promises when doubt tries to take hold. Living by the Spirit also shapes our relationships. It teaches us humility, gentleness, and forgiveness. When conflicts arise, the Spirit guides us toward reconciliation rather than division. He helps us see others not through judgment, but through compassion. A Spirit-led life is marked by gratitude because the Spirit constantly points us back to God's faithfulness. Even ordinary moments become sacred when we walk in step with Him. To live by the Spirit is to allow God to lead every area of life, not just the comfortable parts. It means surrendering habits, attitudes, and desires that resist His work. This kind of living requires trust, but it brings freedom. When we live by the Spirit, we are no longer driven by fear or selfish ambition, but by a deep confidence that God is at work within us. Such a life reflects peace, purpose, and spiritual maturity, drawing others toward the hope and truth found in a life fully guided by the Spirit of God. Application in everyday life is the true measure of wisdom, because wisdom that remains theoretical has little power to transform. Faith is not meant to be confined to sacred spaces or special moments. It is meant to be lived out in ordinary routines, daily decisions, and personal interactions. What we believe is revealed in how we act when faced with pressure, disappointment, or opportunity. Applying wisdom in everyday life means allowing truth to shape our attitudes at home, our conduct at work, and our behavior in public and private moments. It is in the ordinary where faith becomes visible and character is formed. Everyday life presents countless small choices that collectively define the direction of our lives. How we speak to others, how we handle conflict, and how we respond when things do not go our way all reveal whether wisdom is at work within us. Application requires intentionality. It means choosing patience when frustration is easier, choosing integrity when compromise seems convenient, and choosing kindness when it costs us something. These choices may seem small, but they carry lasting impact. Wisdom is proven not by grand gestures, but by consistent obedience in the unseen moments of life. Applying wisdom also involves aligning our priorities with what truly matters. Daily responsibilities can easily consume our attention, leaving little room for reflection or spiritual growth. Wisdom teaches us to create space for prayer, gratitude, and self-examination even in busy schedules. When we apply wisdom, we learn to manage our time, energy, and resources with purpose rather than allowing them to be controlled by urgency or pressure. This alignment brings clarity and peace, reducing the inner conflict that often comes from misplaced priorities. Relationships are one of the clearest arenas where everyday application is tested. Wisdom guides how we listen, forgive, and extend grace. It teaches us to respond thoughtfully rather than react emotionally. In moments of disagreement, wisdom seeks understanding instead of victory. In moments of success, it cultivates humility instead of pride. In moments of failure, it encourages learning instead of despair. Applying wisdom in relationships strengthens trust and builds unity, reflecting a life shaped by love and truth. Application in everyday life requires perseverance, because growth does not happen instantly. There will be moments of failure and missteps along the way. But wisdom invites us to learn and continue forward. A life that applies wisdom consistently becomes a testimony of faith in action. When truth is lived out daily, ordinary lives become extraordinary in purpose, influence, and impact, reflecting a faith that is genuine, resilient, and deeply rooted in a commitment to live rightly in every moment of life.